Welcome to the Tuesday morning plenary. My name is Kate Hanneman. I'm the chair of the annual meeting program planning committee, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker this morning. To reduce the stigma and increase resources for physicians who are struggling with their mental health, Dr. Carrie Cunningham shares her own experience as a physician struggling to take care of herself as she took care of her patients. She is an associate professor of surgery at Harvard Medical School, section head of the Massachusetts General Hospital Endocrine Surgery Unit, and a senior scientist at the MGH Institute for Technology Assessment. She has an NIH-funded research lab and is the Association of Endocrine Surgeons Research Committee Chair, an executive council member, and a past president of the Association of Academic Surgeons. Addressing the current mental health crisis among healthcare professionals, Dr. Carrie Cunningham identifies barriers to care and will develop a multifaceted approach to enacting change in mental health awareness for physicians. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Carrie Cunningham to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. Everyone can come closer, it helps me. In February 2022, I gave my presidential address for the Association for Academic Surgery. It's the reason I'm here today. Beyond bringing my 2 children into the world, it was the most important thing I have ever done. I say this not only because of the outpouring of emails, letters, and calls I received and continue to receive in response, but because it was the culmination of a year of pain, uncertainty, and the hardest work I had known. It was truly an accomplishment just for me to make it there. I'm not going to repeat that speech today. It was meant for that time and where I was in my recovery. But I will repeat what got everyone's attention that day. Following the conventional introduction listing my athletic and academic achievements, I began my speech like this. Yes, I was the top junior tennis player in the nation, won the Junior US Open, and was ranked top 50 in the world professionally at the age of 16. I competed at Wimbledon 5 times. I'm an associate professor of surgery at Harvard. I have an R01 NIH grant, and I'm the president of the Association for Academic Surgery. And I'm also human. I'm a person with lifelong depression, PTSD, and now a substance use disorder. None of my professional successes protected me against this, and I am not special. I am not a mental health expert. I have, however, read many books on related subjects, spoken with many experts and stakeholders, and spent literally hundreds of hours in various forms of therapy over the past few years. These are personal lessons I have learned based on my own experiences and discussions. Dr. Christina Ray Barkley died by suicide on April 12, 2012. She was the chief resident at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and a plan to become a transplant surgeon. She was bright, talented, deeply compassionate, and funny. And she was my dear friend. This is the first and last time she met my daughter. Emery is now 13. I continue to speak to honor Tina and the 300 to 400 physicians who die by suicide annually in the United States. My intention in continuing to tell my story is to provide a voice for those that suffer silently. Statistically, a significant portion of those around you. I know I am privileged to have this platform. I have the resources to get help and a supportive work environment. I have had many loyal, patient, and loving people that weathered the storm with me. Many people do not have that. I am not going to talk about wellness today. Wellness initiatives can be preventative, but they are not going to solve the existing mental health crisis. Burnout may lead to or exacerbate mental health disorders, but it is not the sole cause. This is a talk about mindfulness, agency, compassion, connection, and cultural humility. Since my address, I have been asked many questions about who to go to for help, how to help a friend or colleague who is struggling, many wanting just to see how it turned out for me. And today I'll answer a few of those questions. During the year of my AAS presidency, which culminated in my speech in Houston, and following years of struggling, I had a visit to my home on a Sunday morning by my mentor and boss, following a night I hope I never remember. A call from the head of the MGH Employee Assistance Program the same morning. A referral to the Massachusetts Physician Health Program, a formal evaluation of my fitness to practice medicine, which entailed a trip to Kansas City alone for 5 solid days of every psychological and neurocognitive test you can imagine, which resulted in this. Still hard to read every single time. This was followed by nearly 3 months in intensive inpatient and outpatient treatment. 2 of those months were about a mile away from here. Chicago is actually where I began my true journey. I also spent my 50th birthday and finalized my divorce over Zoom the same year. I signed a 3-year monitoring contract with the Massachusetts PHS. It's hard to believe that was 2.5 years ago now. It seems like yesterday and distant at the same time. It was ugly and terrifying. I felt humiliated, broken, and at times hopeless. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done and am still doing. Looking back, I don't think I would have stepped away from work unless I was forced to. Asking for help was just not in my armamentarium. That was only the beginning, though. While you can be forced to step away from work, you can't make people do the real work it takes to make meaningful change. I understand why few do it. It was brutal, but worth it. And I'm incredibly grateful to those that made the difficult decision to tell. And I'm grateful for all of it. From a therapeutic perspective, it was a very risky thing to tell my story. My therapists were not pleased with me. I was and am scared today that I will not say the right thing and I will have the opposite of my intended impact. It didn't feel like a choice at the time, though. I felt compelled to try to change things so that others don't get to the place that I did. Make it a little less hard for those to ask for help, and hopefully help others save their lives. It was just the right thing to do. I felt the weight in the room during my talk. It was palpable. And still, like right now. Thousands of people have viewed the YouTube video, millions read the Guardian article that followed. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but to illustrate how much people need to hear it. That someone else feels the things that they feel, that you feel. The timing was right and it resonated. One of the consequences of the pandemic was that it put everyone on the same playing field. Everyone got sick and everyone got scared. Most of the world had to sit still, isolated, and the remainder worked tirelessly to care for critically ill patients, sometimes their own family members, sometimes colleagues. It was traumatizing for everyone. It made conversations about mental health possible and crucial. I think that if I had given that speech a decade ago to a room full of surgeons, it would have fallen on deaf ears, and I would likely have been ostracized. Love this one. Similar comments I received: you aren't just cut out for this, or variations of pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Physicians stating grueling training for 5 to 10 years. If it was a matter of hard work, depression would be non-existent in medicine. My story is not unique. Tina's story is not unique. Substance use disorders, those that are diagnosed, are significantly more common in physicians than the general population, 1 in 7. Doctors have double the suicide rate of the general population. Few seek help, and those that do write their own prescriptions, pay cash for medication, and go to other cities for treatment for fear of being found out. Prior to the meeting where I gave that speech, we surveyed over 600 members of the audience. 14% of the respondents reported suicidal ideations, 10% of the people sitting there within the prior 2 weeks. 60% of them knew a colleague who had died by or attempted suicide. I am not an exception. A recent systematic review found suicide rate for female physicians worldwide was double that of the general population and higher than that of male physicians. Trainees and students are most at risk. Of thousands of interns followed prospectively, a third developed clinical depression, which persisted over the following years of their residency and beyond, and only a quarter of them sought treatment. They have zero control over their schedules, are financially strapped, and fear not matching or obtaining a job if they do seek treatment or take needed time off. Death from suicide is not just a physician crisis. More people die from suicide in the US each year than the number of people who die from breast cancer and colorectal cancer. And the number is increasing. 2 million children in the US attempted suicide in a year. Despite being the 11th leading cause of death overall, and this does not include overdoses, and number 2 for kids and young adults, number 1 being overdoses, the stigma surrounding mental health is so powerful that we rarely discuss it. Funding for mental health research is abysmal, and I fear it will be deprioritized in the coming years. Thoughts of suicide do not hit suddenly. It isn't impulsive. Depression can be insidious, progressive, and relentless. It isn't a character flaw or weakness and says nothing about your competence as a physician. Those that have it know that it isn't all in your head. It is physical and it's heavy. It's a chronic disease, but it is treatable. Some people, like me, need to be on lifelong medication. It pains me to think that physicians could get so much relief from an antidepressant, but won't go on one to avoid having it on their record or having to report it for their licensure. We must make it safe for physicians, trainees, and students to ask for help and seek treatment. There are many opportunities along the disease progress to intervene. I've had many people, some friends I had known for a long time, tell me about a particular gesture or conversation that unknowingly prevented them from self-harm. Contrary to commonly held beliefs, exposure to suicide content actually reduces suicidal thoughts and behavior. We have to talk about it. We have to honor and commemorate and learn from the tragic ones that we've lost. I don't know why it's worse in physicians. I think critically that this disease is the same, but it goes unchecked. And like any other disease, it progresses. Everyone comes to the table with a different set of scars. Empathetic people are drawn to medicine. Nearly half of the survey respondents from the ACS, where I gave my speech, they reported a serious traumatic event prior to medical training, half of them. Sometimes the distance traveled is clear, but most times it is not. Don't assume you know where anyone is coming from or what they are going through. As both an athlete, especially in an individual sport and in surgery, I was trained to not show emotion and that it equaled weakness. I achieved almost anything I set my mind to and thought that the rules didn't apply to me. I'm sure that sounds familiar to some of you. I thought that I should be able to fix it myself. Mastery requires discipline, dedication, and focus. Perfectionism is driven by fear. It is unachievable, and it impairs achieving mastery. Without failure and uncertainty, there is no growth. When we fear discussing our weaknesses and see our failures as personal defects, we avoid true challenges and have a difficult time recovering from our inevitable errors. You only make mistakes when you're trying, and we are all fallible. While being perfectionistic undoubtedly leads to external successes, and we are applauded for it, it is also the thing that prevents you from seeking help. If perfection is your goal, you will live your life in a constant state of failure. Another quote from my evaluation pretty much sums it up. Like alcohol is a temporary fix for anxiety, gratification from external achievements is a fleeting sense of self-worth. Your CV will never be long enough. I believe that the imposter syndrome is a consequence of perfectionism. We're comparing our inner world with other people's narratives, their Instagram profile, their CV, and we are really tough inner critics. We do not come even close to affording the same compassion we give to others to ourselves. But these feelings lose their power when you say them out loud. They are thoughts and not truths. When you speak compassionately and honestly with others that you trust, those with shared experiences, you begin to compare apples to apples. Now that I've had some distance from the period of early recovery, I realize how difficult it is from the loved one or friend or colleague's perspective. I don't want to invade their privacy. What if I'm wrong? They want to be left alone. I have been able to pay it forward a number of times for other physicians in the past few years. When you're in it, you're chaotic, defensive, hurt, and there's no thinking about even a year down the road. Only what is immediately in front of you, and it doesn't look good. When approaching someone in crisis, you have to figure out how to get them to take one step in a positive direction without pushing them away. As some people in the audience will know, I was not easy or fun to deal with. It took me a long time to realize I wasn't a victim, and the only one out to get me was myself. There were a number of people who tried to talk to me that I brushed off and pacified, but I listened, and I remember them. And when I finally got help, I knew who I could rely on. If you sense that someone is struggling, you're probably right. We're physicians, we know when a patient is sick. In whatever form that intervention takes, including talking directly and confidentially to them, sharing your concerns with those closest to them, a trusted colleague, or appropriate leadership. It is uncomfortable, but do it anyway. They're going to tell you they're fine. Like me, they're going to be angry and defensive. And if you don't know what to say, then just say that. Just hold space with them. If you are worried that they will harm themselves, do not leave them alone. Their health is more important than their professional success and even their ability to practice medicine. Learn about the resources available at your institution as allies before there is a crisis. I am sure many people in the room don't even know what a physician health program is. And so I want to spend a moment talking about them. I had never heard of them prior to my own referral. There is one in every state. They help your institution navigate the process and provide oversight for physicians in crisis and other healthcare providers from mental illness, including substance use disorders and other health conditions. They are there to advocate for you as well as for patients. They are there to prevent you from being reported to the licensing board. They take on the responsibility of reassuring your institution if and when you're healthy enough to practice medicine. And it works. 80% of participants seeking consultation are not known to the medical board, and over 90% complete their monitoring contracts. They are peer-based, objective, and confidential. They will not speak to anyone without your explicit permission. It is a great resource that is underutilized. Upwards of 25% are self-referrals. And like everything in healthcare, they have a lot of room for growth, I know. But we should be a part of that. Learn about yours, and they will come speak to your institution if you ask them. Now, I want to talk about addiction. Think about how the word addict makes you feel. Someone with a moral failing, selfish, indulgent, other. This painting from hundreds of years ago depicts the hungry ghost realm. The hungry ghost has an insatiable yearning for relief, seeking peace that will never be obtained externally. The definition of addiction is any activity, substance, or behavior that has become the focus of a person's life to the exclusion of other activities that causes harm to the individual or others physically, mentally, or socially. It is a process, a way of thinking. It can manifest as excessive use of substances, overeating, gambling, sex, gaming, and the socially glorified behaviors of a workaholic. The substance and behavior is the smoke and not the fire. In nearly every definition of the word stigma, mental health is used as the example. While the stigma surrounding mental health disorders is bad, it is 10 times worse for those with substance use disorders. William Halstead, father of modern-day residency programs, had a well-known cocaine and morphine addiction until the day he died, upwards of 160 milligrams of morphine a day. Why do I wear a scarlet letter? I'm the one who hasn't had a drink in over 2.5 years. I do a breathalyzer 3 times a day, 7 days a week to prove it. Please keep this in mind the next time someone tells you they're in recovery or a patient has a substance use disorder listed on their past medical history. They are the ones doing the work and carrying the stigma. The next time you see the word addict, think of me. No one plans on going to rehab. It is 5 to 8 hours a day of being brutally honest with yourself and others without any distractions, without work, and without your family. You feel all of the things you've been trying to push down all at once. Abstinence is only the beginning. You have to change the way you think and the way you react. I understand why most people don't do it. It is a lot easier just to continue old habits. But I am so grateful that I've done it. Recovery is time and space to focus on yourself, process trauma, developing healthy coping mechanisms, and repairing and nurturing authentic and meaningful connections with yourself and others. Deep inquiry, brutal honesty, and the most difficult, self-compassion. Like any other skill, it requires discipline, dedication, and focus. The world would be a much better place if everyone did this. People in recovery are the most authentic and strongest people that I know, and I'm the healthiest that I've ever been. Of course, you don't know that at the beginning, and you're already feeling backed into a corner. You're in fight or flight mode. Trusting anyone is tough, and it takes courage. My favorite Brené Brown quote is, vulnerability looks like truth and feels like courage. Courage is facing fear in the midst of vulnerability. It is impossible to experience what we do without having it impact us. It's hard not to take medical errors and complications personally. It has been shown time and again that experiencing a major medical error is correlated with depression and suicidal ideation. This impacts psychiatrists, pathologists, and radiologists. Diagnosis leads to treatment. We cannot cure all disease or prevent every complication. Our patients will die, sometimes by our own hands. Our decisions can be life and death, and we sometimes get it wrong because we're human. And we take on that responsibility day after day for decades. We take it home, we take it personally, and we rarely grieve. We are taking oaths such as this before we even start our training, to put our patients' health before our own. When we harm or fail to heal patients despite best efforts, we feel intense guilt. The data on the consequences of physician burnout is overwhelming, and you've all heard it. Beyond the personal consequences, including risk of occupational injury, detrimental alcohol use, and suicide, it also impacts patient care. From the view of patient safety in hospital systems, burnout has been associated with poor patient satisfaction, medical errors, and decreased productivity. While Dr. Dean emphasizes that it isn't a diagnosis, why doesn't this constitute impairment? Although I have been asked many times how to fix it, I don't have the answers to that. Meaningful change will require time, resources, and a systemic commitment. Everyone does have the ability to impact change, though. There are organizations, elected officials, people like you that have made it their mission to reduce mental health stigma by talking about it and lessening the burden on healthcare providers. Institutions are making mental health a topic of conversation and a priority. Lorna Breen was an ER physician working at the height of the pandemic in New York City. She was highly successful, beloved, and by all accounts, happy. She died by suicide on April 26, 2020. Her sister, Jennifer Breen Feist, and Corey Feist founded the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation in her honor. And in February of 2022, they passed the Provider Protection Act into law to invest in training healthcare providers on suicide prevention, a campaign to address mental health stigma, and working to change the licensing and credentialing questions. The act is up for reauthorization for funding. Please reach out to your state representatives. All healthcare workers have answered overly broad and invasive mental health questions on applications that are inappropriate at best and violate privacy in the workplace laws. Through auditing and advocating for change in questions to address mental and physical conditions as one or not at all, and safe haven no reporting options to physicians receiving care, such as with the Physician Health Service, the Lorna Breen Foundation has helped 36 states change their questions. They are proof that we can affect change. And the next step is credentialing. I'm proud to say that MGB, as a system has now changed the credentialing questions in Massachusetts to match those in the licensure. Even the JCC itself, whose charge is to provide safe and quality care for patients, put out a statement recommending organizations not ask about past history of mental health or treatment. These questions not only have no impact on patient safety, but prevent physicians from seeking treatment. If you are asked to answer these questions in credentialing or peer reviews, ask for them to be changed, or you can send them to me. Words matter. Use person-first language. Mental health is health. Substance use disorders, not abuse. And it is died by suicide or thoughts of harming themselves. Clearly, I'm biased, but I believe that storytelling is at the heart of changing stigma. Only by talking about things will it be normalized, and not just by those afflicted, and not just by women. There are people making a difference. You have to prioritize your health. You don't need to hit rock bottom or go to rehab or hit a crisis and uproot your life to focus on this. Please do not let it get to where I did. Stop it before it gets to a crisis and devote time reflecting on this. Live with intent. Think about what you value, not what you think you're supposed to value, and who you value. Are your goals in line with your values? With clear overarching principles and absolute boundaries, you can check yourself and course correct. The past year wasn't just a thing to get through, it was a change in the way I think and feel, and I continue to grow, regress, and continue in the direction of my intent. It is just life, but I'm noticing it now, and I'm steering the ship. Grit over resilience. Grit has a plan. Grit is perseverance and passion. Remember that your profession is not your identity. I had thought a lot about my own identity over the past few years and how difficult it is for anyone who's consumed by mastering a skill, be it surgery, medicine, or sport, to separate those two things. This is not saying that our work isn't incredibly meaningful or that we aren't passionate about caring for our patients. It is a great honor and privilege for me to be a surgeon. But anything that can be taken away from you is by definition not you. I didn't know who I was without being a tennis player, surgeon, wife, mother. I had no idea if I would return to work, and I had to figure out who I was without it. Find your people. Surround yourself with authentic people, people who make you feel safe and supported. Surround yourself with people who inspire you and leave you feeling better. Prepare for difficult days that will inevitably come. Wouldn't it be better to arm ourselves with these skills before a crisis? Medical school is tough, residency is really tough, and the first few years of being an attending are very lonely. You lose your wolf pack. We spend countless hours in training, studying for exams, and in academic development. Why can't a portion of that time be spent in developing skills to withstand the experiences of training, to train ourselves to support each other safely? Work to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Read about something other than medicine, psychology, philosophy, mindfulness, stories of other people like us who struggled. Play. Do something that you lose track of time doing and because it brings you joy and for no other reason. Meditate. It's free and available 24/7, and even a few minutes a day shows objective health benefits. And there's no wrong way to meditate. It's just noting your thoughts and emotions without judgment or distraction. I call it emotional discipline. Learn to respond and not react. Don't send that angry email. Note which part of your brain is in charge. Strive for equanimity. Practice mindful self-leadership. No one can take away your power to choose. Your options and resources may be limited, but your power to choose is always yours. We are taught to say yes to every request, but learn to say no. Sometimes you have to say good enough. You don't need to read that manuscript 15 times. You can do anything, but not everything. Trust me, I tried. Live with intention, integrity, kindness, and grace. Do everything the best you can, learn from your mistakes, and then let it go. Learn the lesson, leave the event. I still have rough days and weeks, but I've built a foundation to fall back on and the skills to sustain them. I know that ignoring feelings or distracting myself only makes it worse. Turning toward the discomfort is a place of practice. Sit there. You will get through it, and that will empower you. Apathy and hopelessness are difficult to push through, I know. You have to decide to do some things that you really don't feel like doing and for a while. And you have to trust someone telling you that it will be worth it. You cannot do it alone, and you are not alone. It is in no one else's power to make you happy. Change is constant, growth is hard, but nothing we value comes easily. Set boundaries, get uncomfortable, sit still, and play. It is my hope and your challenge to figure out a way to help people before it becomes a crisis, getting people to take that first step. As leaders and allies, become as knowledgeable about mental health disease as you are about every other disease. Psychological first aid should be a requirement. This would save a lot more lives than learning about the different fire extinguishers in your hospital. That was supposed to be a joke. You're allowed to laugh. Know the resources where you work. Provide support for the trainees and other healthcare providers. Check in with people you know have had a tough complication or a life stressor. And remember that mental health is health. Substance use disorders are mental health disorders. Depression is a disease, and it isn't just a woman's problem. It isn't a character flaw or weakness. Depression says nothing about your competence as a physician. If someone you know is in crisis, just be there for them. Let them know their feelings are valid, not that they shouldn't feel them or that they should feel differently. Leave your judgment at the door. Don't compare their troubles to other people. Suffering is not a competition. Sit quietly with them and listen to them if they talk. And don't try to fix it. You can't force someone to seek help or to change. Show them compassion and not sympathy. Talk to them directly and not about them. Get them the professional support they need if and when they are ready. I want to close with an excerpt from a piece written by comedian and fellow person in recovery, Hank Azaria, about Matthew Perry after he passed and who had helped him get into recovery himself. He does a beautiful job of describing why support groups work. As low as we go, we tend to feel we're alone in it. Whether our problem is alcohol, a bad marriage, illness, depression, or strife. We feel that we are the only one who has ever gone through it. Terminal uniqueness. And it is by going into a room with a few or a lot of other people and sharing, saying out loud what it is that's upsetting you, and hearing from others what they feel, well, maybe you're not that alone. In fact, in time, what we become sure of is that the most unfortunate, terrible things we face are actually our greatest strength. as they connect us with others. No matter who it is or what substance that person is hooked on, loneliness is at the root. That's the best we can do in life. Be truthful and hope that those truths become lanterns for others as they wander through the dark. Thank you. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'll get hugs after this, yeah.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for that beautiful and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you all for being here. This concludes the session. Thank you.